And look who's coming up.
Welcome to the Monday edition of Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. My name is Dean Millard. It is awesome to have you aboard on this Monday, October 10th, which in Canada is known as Thanksgiving Monday. We celebrate in October. Americans celebrate in November. And our Thanksgiving, for any American fans watching out there, is nothing like yours. We eat turkey, we watch a little football, and that's where the similarities end. There are no crazy shopping deals or flights or anything like that. It's a more relaxed, casual weekend. Not to say that we don't enjoy yours, because football on Thursdays during the day is awesome. Anyway, it is Thanksgiving Monday, so we will chat about certainly things that we are thankful for today on the program. I'm thankful that I have 2 hours every day where I get to throw my opinions out there towards you and hopefully influence some of you. Welcome to everybody who's watching on Twitch. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are here Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports. Andy McNamara is here on Sundays with Ultimate Fantasy Football at 11 a.m. Eastern, getting you ready for the season. And of course, you can catch this show on replays on YouTube, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, and in podcast format as well. Just search Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. If you're watching on Twitch, thank you very much. Drop in where you're watching from, and also do know that if you would like this show free of commercials, you just have to pay a full subscription and you're in. And then you get to watch this show completely free of commercial distractions. All right, really awesome show lined up for you today. My man Larry Fisher, the Hockey Encyclopedia. And for kids out there that you don't know what that term means, ask your parents. They'll know. Larry joins us back on the show to give us his NHL power rankings, his UFHL power rankings. It's going to be fun. It's been a while since we chatted with Larry. He did so much for this platform. So looking forward to that conversation, and I'm sure you're looking forward to his power rankings. I know Belly Up Podcast power rankings fired some people up. Jamie Thomas makes his Monday usual spot. He's with Jets Radio. Preseason continues, of course, for the NHL. And we're going to dive into Major League Baseball playoffs. We will dive into what is happening in the NFL. Tom Brady is playing in bubble wrap now. I mean, the rushing the passer that was called against the Falcons in that game yesterday should not even been called in two-hand touch. It was embarrassing. And that kept the drive alive. And this is what I'm saying. I'm telling you, Tom Brady put up a lot of stats, but this guy is getting, this guy gets so much preferential treatment. And listen, I know, you know what? Actually, I've been, also, before I get into that, we'll have a Dobber Hockey double shot of the Kraken and the Blues. Just quickly, I was rethinking how I determine a GOAT. Who is a GOAT in the world of sports and things like that? I'm almost thinking you have to be a child prodigy to be a true GOAT. Like a true GOAT. And in that instance, Tom Brady wouldn't. Gretzky, boom. Tiger Woods, he's got it. You're on the Ed Sullivan Show or whatever he was on. Maybe it wasn't the Ed Sullivan Show. That was the Beatles. But anyway, I just think it's just rethinking my GOAT status. I think you have to be like Wright, true phenom from as a kid. Anyway, I also think Tom Brady's getting some crazy calls, and that was ridiculous that extended that drive for the Buccaneers yesterday. Wild. All right. Our question of the day, who is underrated in fantasy football right now? Who out there, in your opinion, is underrated when it comes to fantasy football? The guy I'm going with is Saquan Barkley from the New York Giants. And you might think that's weird, but Saquon Barkley had, a lot of people had written this guy off. He was RB11 in a lot of drafts, but right now he's RB2 in standard leagues, delivering 17.8 points per game, only behind Nick Chubb, who kept it going against the Chargers yesterday. Barkley had that monster game in week 1, dipped in week 2, but then bounced back. And he said, I'm motivated. I want to prove people wrong. And he settled in nicely for the 4-1 Giants. He's also getting more involved in the passing game. 36 yards receiving this week, 6 targets to go along with his 70 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He has a career-high 3.2 yards per carry before contact right now. And he's taking direct snaps. He's in the Wildcat formation. I mean, I think Saquon Barkley is just a great revelation this year of a guy coming back from the injuries that had plagued him. Where there's some other guys that not so much. So who is who's a guy who you think is underrated in fantasy football this season? You can hit me up in the Twitch chat. You can also get me on Twitter at Duck Millard, or you can reach us at UFS Network on Twitter. So weigh in on everything that you are seeing this year in fantasy football, and let me know what you think. Nick T, VIP, chiming in saying, looking forward to Larry's predictions. And how about Geno Smith? Yeah, no kidding, eh? 75.2 completion percentage, over 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, only 2 picks. He almost has 100 fantasy points. Geno Smith's passer rating this past weekend, 139.7. 268 yards, 3 touchdowns. This guy has 7 touchdowns in his last 3 games. 9 on the season. You're darn right, Nick. That guy is definitely underrated. Now, when does the bubble burst? That's the question. If you have Geno, you should be selling high now. And if not, I'd be wary. I'd be wary about that bubble bursting. But that is a really, really good one. Geno Smith, definitely underrated. All right, here are our top 3 today. We're talking about NFL teams 6 weeks in. Who are your top 3 teams right now? Well, I guess almost 6 weeks in. And the reason I don't have the Chiefs on here is because they haven't played in week 6. So I don't think it's terribly fair to put them on this list when they could end up having a massive game and be up higher than some of these teams, or a terrible game and be justified. So they get an honorable mention, but I don't think there's any doubt for anybody about the Philadelphia Eagles being the best team and the only undefeated team in the NFL. Now, the Eagles are not exactly dominating as of late, but what they are doing is showing adversity, and they showed that against the Cardinals. And they also benefited from St. Louis or Arizona making some mistakes. But this is the thing, when the Eagles offense struggles a little bit, which has not been often, their defense is so good. So they have everything going right now. The only thing that stops the Eagles right now is health. Jalen Hurts, again, delivers with another strong game. And I think people doubted Jalen Hurts. In my opinion, I think people early in his career doubted Jalen Hurts because of all the other running quarterbacks. I think it was a symptom of the league at the time. And like, oh, here's another running quarterback that's not going to be able to throw the ball. Well, he's thrown a few. He ran in 2 touchdowns. He had gone away from rushing in touchdowns the last couple of weeks. So Jalen Hurts goes 26 of 36, 230 yards, 61 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, 27 fantasy points in standard leagues. And he was going up a guy like Kyler Murray, who gets a lot more hype, in my opinion, for doing, at the very most, the same thing. So people sleeping on Jalen Hurts, I don't know why they would be 6 weeks in now. And after last year, he was very good as well. He's going to be top 5 quarterback, top 3. I've been saying it for weeks. The Buffalo Bills, they probably could be here, but at times the Bills have just, I don't know, I don't want to say disinterested because I don't think a professional team, but just not 100% flowing all the time. And obviously that's why they lost a game against Miami. But when they are flowing, they are strutting. Like when they are on, they're the team nobody wants to play because, and they have a bit of pedigree because they've been doing it for a couple of years now. They have the pieces. I think the missing pieces on defense. Josh Allen. They have the receivers. Their running game isn't fantasy awesome, but it gets it done. And the reason I'm putting the 49ers on here is they have everything except for the Jalen Hurts and the Josh Allen. They got Jimmy Garoppolo. Their Jalen Hurts and Jalen Allen is hurt. But they have Jimmy G. And you know what? An Eagles 49ers, Bills, let's say Chiefs, Final Four would be pretty awesome. So, I don't know. They have lots of weapons on both sides of the ball, a quarterback who makes smart decisions, a really good play caller on both offense and defense. Some people say the best defensive coordinator in the league. And you know what? For the people that say the 49ers are good, but they got Jimmy G. There's no but. It's the 49ers are good and they have Jimmy G. It's like Jalen Hurts. People finally coming around. Well, not finally. He's a young guy. Jimmy G has been doubted. I said earlier he's going to be important to the 49ers. And he has been. He has been. So there's my top 3 in the NFL. Nick T VIP saying Seahawks fan saying Russell Wilson who? Well, look at things. Look at the turn of events. It's wild when you look at what is the gong show that is Denver right now and Seattle. Who would have predicted these two teams would have the same record? I think most people thought Denver was going to be a lot better with this addition, but the decisions in coaching have been just absolutely bizarre and just mind-blowingly bad at times. So that's my top 3. I would love to know, and like I said, the reason I don't have the Chiefs in is because they're playing tonight. And they could do many awesome things, or they could absolutely tank it. We'll see. But fun Monday night game tonight between the Chiefs and the Raiders. There are so many fantasy options in this game. And it likely means a lot of fantasy matchups are still to be decided. What's your score? What is your fantasy matchup heading into the Monday nighter? Are you strutting or are you sweating? The matchup I am in tonight it's wild. Like, I am going into a game in a touchdown-only league up 27-20. I've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Josh Jacobs, and I'm facing Mahomes and Darren Waller. Oh, by the way, I'm a Raiders fan. So this is going to be a tough night for me. It's going to be a tough night. You know, cheering against the Chiefs is never hard, but cheering for Helaire to run in some touchdowns so Patrick Mahomes doesn't get any points will be quite difficult. If you'd like to make a bet on this game and do it responsibly, head to my Twitter account @DuckMallard. Use the link in my bio, get a 125% bonus on sports. You can use it tonight. We'll get into some prop bets a little bit later on for the Monday night football game. But what's the score in your fantasy football game? What is the score? Are you sweating or are you strutting when it comes to fantasy football tonight? And the Haunch saying, how about the Jets? Yeah, there's some big surprises in New York this year. Both baseball teams made the playoffs, and the Mets crashed and burned. The Giants are 4-1. The Jets are 3-2. There's a lot of buzz about the Rangers. I mean, New York is usually a pretty great place to be, I'm guessing. But right now, the Big Apple is the big nut when it comes to sports. They've got everything going for them. And like, for somebody who's lived through the Tom Brady Patriot domination, to see Buffalo 4-1, like, you imagine if somebody woke up from a 15-year coma, and they're like, the Patriots are 2-3, the Bills are 4-1, and the Jets are 3-2? They would be very bizarre. Very, very bizarre, I would think. Indeed. All right, we have a lot of stuff to get to. Before we get into our next guest, we do need to talk about the big story today in the NFL, and that is the first coach has been fired. And Jamie Thomas called it last week. He said Matt Rule will be the first NFL coach fired, and the Carolina Panthers obliged. The Panthers had an NFL worst 271 yards per game. They had lost 25 in a row when allowing 17 points, which is not a lot of points. 17 points is not a lot. When you have lost 25 in a row, that means you probably should have been fired earlier. QB rating, last. Offensive efficiency, last. Yards per game, you guessed it, last.
Child, please.
So Matt Rule is out, and like I said, my man Jamie Thomas called it last week, saying this will be the first coach fired, and indeed, I'm pretty sure other people were saying it too. I'm going to guess Jamie wasn't the only guy saying it, but he did say it on this show. So we'll chat with him a little bit about that a little bit later, but when we come back, he's going to return to the show. Larry Fisher will make some fearless predictions when it comes to the National Hockey League. Playoff teams in and out, Stanley Cup finalist and champion, and some major awards when it comes to individual players. Also, for you Ultimate Fantasy hockey fans, owners, and GMs, Larry's going to unveil his power rankings. Speaking of power rankings, have you ever had an owner of a league do power rankings? Well, you now have, because breaking news in the UFHL today, and fittingly, we're having the insider on, the man who broke all the big news in the UFHL. But Kyle Hall, who used to host this show, joined us last week to talk about the Rangers and unveil his power rankings, has purchased the Warriors for $2,000 USD. So it's all coming together. It's like 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. All right, when we come back, we're going to dive into Larry Fisher, his predictions for the NHL, his fearless predictions when it comes to the UFHL and the power rankings, and whatever else goes on. Maybe there's some breaking news that he'll tell us about as well. This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. We're back in just a second. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. It is just after 4:22 in the Eastern time zone. My name is Dean Millard. Welcome back. If you did pop out for a quick drink to Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, our Twitch channel, and our YouTube. And, of course, we put this show out in podcast format. Audio format, if you would like to get that, check it out on your commute or whatever it is where you listen to your podcast. All right, time to bring in a good friend of mine and a guy who is responsible for a lot of great things that have happened in UFFS and particularly UFHL. He is known as the Insider, Larry Fisher, joining me back on the show. Great to see you once again, my man, on this show. And I know that you have to be just as excited as everybody else about tomorrow night and the start of the NHL season and not having to see preseason games anymore. Excited? Is this sort of like Christmas Eve a little bit for you?
It's the season of optimism, Dean. Everybody's excited in 32 different NHL cities and 32 different UFHL franchises. This is Christmas Eve for the hockey world, and obviously that preseason drags on a little long. I think everybody was ready to get it going, but we've seen some roster moves in both leagues over the last 24, 48 hours, and opening night rosters are getting set, and the puck will drop with the 2 games tomorrow night, so can't wait.
Strange with those early games as well in Europe that, you know, there's still preseason games going on. I'm sure most head-to-head leagues are just rolling it into one, kind of like you do at the All-Star game. But certainly when you're in leagues as detailed as we have in the UFHL, it takes some working to work around regular season games while the preseason is still going on and waiver moves. But it's amazing this time every year. I mean, there you can do definitely reality shows on July 1st of the trade deadline. You could probably do one around now in the NHL with the amount of names that hit waivers and the speculation if anybody's going to get claimed, because the reality is every team is trying to sneak somebody through, so they don't always have room to say, oh, that guy's available, let's sneak him onto our roster.
5 of 64 in the NHL got claimed today, Dean. So that's actually, you know, I always set the over-under at about 2 or 3, you know. Yeah. So 5 would have been the over today. A couple surprising guys like a Jared Tenorti going to Chicago. But again, a team like Chicago, Luke Richardson, he's going to want to play a big, tough style. They didn't have a lot of toughness there, so they're bringing in somebody to protect as they bring in some young guys, and certainly going forward to have him in their system. But some surprising claims there, and I believe, Dean, there's going to be more than a similar number, probably close to 64 or 50 plus in the UFHL tomorrow as well, hitting the waiver wire. So it'll be interesting to see if the UFHL has 5 claims or less. I think, again, you can set the over-under at 2 or 3, but certainly there's potential for some musical chairs with goaltenders, among other positions, in the UFHL. And again, everybody's trying to find that one last piece to the puzzle before the real games get going on Tuesday. Like I said, Dean, that the 2 early games in Europe, very strange scenario, because San Jose and Nashville, they didn't have to be cap compliant. They didn't have to be down to 23 players. They were carrying 27. So they still had to make all their cuts today and get compliant for the rest of the regular season now as well. But everybody's excited, and Nashville's already 2 points or 4 points up on the rest of the field, having swept that global series.
I'm just looking at the auction page for UFHL today is just massive, because all these teams are trying to sneak guys through waivers. We have made one claim. Definitely, we're going to try and make a claim in the UFHL for a player as well. I'm not going to just say who it is just yet, but we will try and take a player off there. I don't know if we'll get him or not, but this is an interesting way to kind of speculate, because most of these guys that are being put on waivers have already been put on waivers in the NHL, so they're not going to do you any good. You're hoping that they're the first call up or something like that if you have room, because they got to go on your active roster.
And the NHL, Dean, a lot of these waiver moves, you have to remember, are cap gymnastics. A guy like Mike Riley, a guy like Nick Foligno, they're probably not going to the AHL. They're going to be on the NHL roster. Ironically, both those players are available on UFHL waivers as well. Likely their franchise. Well, in the Gators case, Dean, they're not cap compliant to start the year. They could be if they put Laurent Brossoit, their backup goaltender, on LTIR, which Vegas is going to do. That saves like $2.3 million, and then they'd have to waive a guy like Alex Boulet or somebody to that effect. So, and that would give them the $3 million cap space they need. But they also had the option of, let's just waive Mike Riley, get a bidding war going, because there are teams that have cap room in the UFHL. See who wants to get in a bidding war on Mike Riley, take back that score coin for our operating budget this year within the UFHL, and then, wait and see what happens with Brossoit, or still put them on LTIR and give themselves a little more cap space to maybe go out and claim a different player that they like more. But definitely interesting times in both the NHL and the UFHL, and seeing a lot of the same names hit the waiver wire in both leagues. We'll see if a guy like Mike Riley can sneak through in the UFHL, but I'm sure teams with cap space see a player like him to be quite valuable despite the price tag.
And not surprising, it's why the Gators put Bear Boulet on the trade block today, because they're going to put him on waivers right away. The same reason we were trying to trade Nick Patan before we put him on waivers and things like that. So you try to get anything you can, and if not, you put him in your reserve list, or you get the money back for operating costs. Well, speaking of some of those teams that you were just talking about, and the Gators in particular, they are one of your top 10 teams as we reveal Larry Fisher's power rankings. Highly coveted, very much people looking forward to these rankings, especially after the Belly Up podcast rankings came out over the weekend and really ruffled some feathers. Not duck feathers, we liked where they had us, but ruffled a lot of feathers. And we know these power rankings, I don't know why, Larry. I think there's a bit of insecurity with some franchises when they see their teams up here. I have zero problem seeing Duckmans down low, because we haven't been very good, and we want to under-promise and over-deliver. So I think there's a bit of an insecurity issue with some franchises when they see power rankings. Let's see what your power rankings do to the rest of the league. I'll give you the floor to take us through your power rankings.
To start, Dean, I'll just preface it by saying parity is alive and well in the UFHL. There are tiers here, including, Duckmans, down low, but up 12 spots from where you finished last season. Speaks to the work that Duckmans Domination put in the offseason, acquiring stars like Nikita Kucherov, but to go from 32 to 20 is a big jump. But obviously, you mentioned all the other power rankings that are coming in. Commissioner Andrea Krandek's done a great job reaching out to different media outlets, getting them A, interested in the league, but B, get them involved in doing power rankings. Hey, come check out our roster and our scoring system, and you tell us how you, an outsider opinion. If I'm the insider, we got some outsiders weighing in. Even Kyle Hall, you mentioned, Dean, the newest owner in the UFHL, bought the Warriors franchise. I got him ranked at number 30th overall going into the season, a potential Bedard lottery-type team. But you look at Kyle's power rankings, he had the Bentley Jacks in the top 10, and I have them at 32. So it's very interesting from one ranking to the next, team. But in my rankings and based on tiers, 1 to 5 I got as a top tier. Originally, I had it 1, 2, and then a second tier of 3 to 8 kind of thing. And the more I looked at it, the more I felt any of those top 5 teams are capable of winning the Founders Trophy, including the defending regular season champion Royals. I know there's a lot of I've seen them down in 17 on some and into the 20s. The rebuild, maybe Arnie's word rebuild got stuck in a lot of people's heads this offseason, but the Royals are still a force to be reckoned with. I think the Grizzlies, especially with their rookies looking so well coming out of the preseason with Kuzmenko and Holloway, looking like they'll be impactful players. The Grizzlies are strong. Red Army's a popular pick. I think all 5 Belly Up writers picked Red Army at number 1, as did Kyle Hall. That's totally plausible. Very young team. They're a team that's franchise that's going to be able to maximize games played because they do have so many waiver exempt prospects, rookies that are currently in the NHL. So look for Red Army to, if Jeff Ray wants to, he can maximize his games played at a level that other franchises can't. And a lot of young guys that should really take a jump this year towards becoming, point per game guys like Jack Hughes. Expect him to hit over 80 points. Trevor Zegras could be flirting within that, 70, 80 range. And Alexis Lafreniere is probably this will be the year he pops as well. I still have the Yetis on top, Dean, when the dust settled. I think Scott Lowater did a great job this offseason of realizing that defense and forward points in the UFHL are valued the same. Well, when it comes to shots on goal, all those sort of extra categories, forwards tend to contribute more than defensemen in the UFHL. He traded a lot of his high-priced defensemen in order to acquire value contracts up front, including a guy like Nito Niederreiter, Dean, who scored 3 goals in 2 games for his Nashville debut. So I really think when you got Connor McDavid and that group of 14 forwards, including young Jake Neighbors rounding it out. But you look at that depth up front for the Yetis. The one thing I'll say, Dean, and games played again. If the Yetis get hit by injuries, that's what held them. That's what had them back in 8th place last season, fighting for 7th, 8th, was they didn't have the games played. And they still don't have a protected list for that next man up mentality, like teams like Rock Republic, Kamikaze, even the Titans are a team that has a number of guys, depending who clears waivers, that could be the next man up. So when I look at the Yetis, their opening night 23 is number 1 on my list. If they stay healthy, I think they're the team to beat with Scott Lowater and Connor McDavid leading the way.
All right, so poll question that I've just put up on our Twitch chat. Whose rankings are most realistic? Larry, Kyle, Belly Up, none. Maybe somebody thinks none, so everybody can go. And I think Belly Up is leading the way right now. I'm with you on the Royals at number 2. Don't believe Arnie. Don't anybody out there get sucked into Arnie's "we're in a rebuild" bull bleep. You know what? Because they're not, and you didn't see, you saw through that facade, so I'm glad you did. The Monarchs are an interesting team because in some rankings they were below us, and in others you have them in the top 10. Obviously they made a big splash. What do you like about the Monarchs?
Love their forward group, Dean. They got 3 lines that can score. Again, the cap is starting to tighten up on them. It's funny, they had all the cap space in the world. They actually traded with the Royals, acquired Matthew Tkachuk, and then Josh Norris signs, and then this guy's Anthony Cirelli signs, and all these contracts are coming in. Some of them don't kick in till next season, but all of a sudden the Monarchs go from $15 million in cap space to a huge cap crunch going forward, especially with the next year contracts that kick in. But Rasmus Dahlin and Seth Jones on the point, and then stacked up front, very deep forward group. That forward group I think is going to light up the UFHL. A lot of young guys in their prime, Dubois and Kachuk and those type of players. I really like what George Batchel and the Monarchs have done up front. Goaltending is the big question mark, the big concern there. They did acquire Jake Allen in exchange for a shipped-out Antti Ranta, but they're not going to get many points in goal, and the defense is middle of the pack average, even though they have Dahlin and Jones at the top end. The rest of the defense is work in progress. But for me, the Monarchs, Dean, one of my surprise playoff teams. Again, saying parity is alive and well in the UFHL, I actually went, Dean, with 5 new playoff teams from last season in the UFHL, according to these power rankings. In that Allen Conference, the Monarchs are one of them, as well as the Godfathers team. They kind of got the short end of the stick last season. They actually had more points than the Bentley Jacks and the Outlaws, but missed the playoffs based on the way the conferences worked. They since added Cole Caulfield, Seth Jarvis, among others. The Godfathers, guys like Rantanen, I think is going to have a big year again. So the Godfathers I have safely in my top 10 and as a playoff team, as well as the Monarchs. And who's my other new one in that division is the Eliminators, Dean. The Eliminators, some people say the Eliminators bought a team this offseason. They use ScoreCoin as an asset, and they acquired a lot of young talent, but a deep roster as well. They really shored up their goaltending. Assuming Alexander Georgiev plays well for Colorado, and Logan Thompson with the Vegas Golden Knights, although they have Martin Jones with the Seattle Kraken as their number 2 right now. But that situation will play out. But I think the Eliminators have overtaken the Stingrays, which is a big statement in that Lemieux division. And Arlo Scholz, he's definitely voting that my rankings are the most unrealistic. He's probably going none because he hates the power rankings. But the reality is that the Lemieux division winning Stingrays had to unload guys, Taylor Hall, Jordan Eberle, Zach Werenski, and they have no goaltending as of today. They might claim a couple goaltenders tomorrow, Dean, but Cam Talbot's out to start the season, and they previously walked away from Craig Anderson's contract in Buffalo. So they were planning, I'm assuming, on using the waiver wire, the trade, to shore up the goaltending. But then when Cam Talbot got hurt and they already didn't have a backup, and they have, as far as that next man up that I talked about from the Yetis, the Stingrays have the least depth in the UFHL. They don't have any players other than maybe Jake Christensen and Igor Sokolov, or Yegor Sokolov in Ottawa, might play some games this year. But generally speaking, there is no next man up for the Stingrays, so they need their big guns to stay healthy. Still very much a playoff contender, but I have the Eliminators inching ahead. The brother-in-law, battle of the brother-in-laws, Luke Schonweiss inching ahead of Los Scholz in that Lemieux division for the 3rd seed there. So Godfathers, Monarchs, and Eliminators in the Allen Conference, Dean. And then over in the Legends Conference, I went with the Brutes and the Snipers and actually took out the Bentley Jacks, which won't be a huge surprise because they're in the sweepstakes for the Be Bad for Bedard race. Their affiliated scout has the rights to Bedard. So they're looking ahead to draft day as one of the franchises from the UFHL. But I also took out, Dean, the reigning Klein Cup playoff champion, Rock Republic, as you see at number 22 on my power rankings. They also had a bit of a sell-off in the offseason. But the one thing that can help Rock Republic potentially still get into that last playoff spot or into a playoff picture in the Orr division, Dean, is that next man up. They have a very deep protected list. A lot of their prospects are going to get NHL games this year. And if they have injuries, they're going to have guys that can come up. So Rock Republic isn't out of it by any means. I kind of have a 16 to 25 tier now, Dean, of playoff contenders. I think 6 to 15 are pretty much locked in. So it's going to be a battle for those last couple playoff spots. Last couple wild card races should be intense and exciting in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League.
Well, and it sounds like we might all have to move the Outlaws up in our rankings because Nick Gutley has said boatload of moves coming for the Outlaws, one of which will be a blockbuster. So maybe we'll have to move them up. But we are going to move now to the National Hockey League, which also gets underway tomorrow, as does the UFHL. Well, both of them got underway last week, because we mirror everything about the NHL. So a lot of these award winners will probably be award winners in the UFHL as well. But let's start with some individual player awards. And we'll start right at the top. The big award, the number one award that every hockey player wants to win, whether you're a goalie, a forward, or a defenseman, and that is the Hart Trophy, which has really been debated the last little while when it comes to this. And anybody that knows you probably already knows what your answer is, but lay it on us. Who's going to take down the Hart this year?
Yeah, without a doubt, Dean, Connor McDavid is the most dynamic, talented hockey player in the NHL. He's the face of the league. He is the Hart Trophy winner. He probably should have been the Hart Trophy winner last season. 60 goals is a great accomplishment for Austin Matthews, but you saw in the playoffs, Austin Matthews in the third period, down 2-1 against Tampa Bay. He couldn't elevate to take over the game, then flip over to the Battle of Alberta and watch Connor McDavid take over a series, take over a game, starting in the first round against Los Angeles. At the end of those playoffs, I don't think there was any doubt who the most dominant force in hockey is. It's Connor McDavid, and I would be shocked if he doesn't retake the throne as the Hart Trophy winner, and it's going to take years for somebody to knock him off, in my opinion. He's the as close as it comes to the Gretzky, and I don't think Austin Matthews is the Lemieux to McDavid's Gretzky. I don't think he's quite on the same level.
Yeah, as a shooter, but not as certainly as a guy with that skill set that Mario Lemieux had. And listen, Mario Lemieux might have caught some of Gretzky's records had he been healthy. I don't think you'll ever see Austin Matthews outpoint Connor McDavid. And I think you're going to see Connor McDavid motivated to score at least 50 this year. And if he scores 50 and leads the league, it's going to be pretty hard to not give him the Hart Trophy. And for you, the next graphic, all I had to change was 2 words. I had to change 2 words for the Out Ross, because obviously you're thinking McDavid's going to lead the league again.
Yeah, that one's a slam dunk, I think. Barring injuries, I think Connor McDavid could play 60 games and miss 22 games to injury and still win the Art Ross. I think he's that far ahead of the field. I think he could flirt with 150 points this season, mainly because I think Edmonton's only going to be better. They added some more talent up front. The power plays, as lethal as it gets in the league. I think a guy like Evan Bouchard's going to have a bigger impact. Obviously, a full season of Evander Kane on one wing and to be determined on the other wing. And I think Edmonton's going to find a way to bring in, I think the championship window is open in Edmonton now, and I think Ken Holland is going to be aggressive this year. I think that 2023 first-round pick's on the table, and they're going to try to bring in a guy like Patrick Kane at the deadline or somebody like that with retained salary to really give McDavid that stretch run in playoffs, another impact player as a line mate. But yeah, I think he's going to run away with the Art Ross if he's healthy, and I think he can hang on even if he misses 15 to 20 games.
That would be kind of Lemieux and Gretzky-esque if he was to miss that much time and still do it. But he got such a fast start last year that he was so far ahead of everybody that he could still do that. All right, so if the Hart or the Art Ross is a slam dunk, I think most people are agreeing with you when it comes to the Rocket Richard. So lay it on us why you think it's going to be a repeat performance.
Yeah, Dean, these aren't surprises. These aren't the boldest, most fearless predictions as far as the first few award winners. But Austin Matthews, he does have the best shot in hockey. Mitch Marner's a great playmaker. They have a great chemistry. Their power plays. If Edmonton's number 1, Toronto might be number 2 or 3, maybe behind Tampa as far as the most lethal power play units. So, again, he had 60 goals last season. I think he'll be in that range again. I think he can be a perennial 55-plus goal guy, again, providing he stays healthy. I think Austin Matthews is great for the game. He's got a great personality, brings a little bit different element than Connor McDavid, obviously, but 2 young superstars, and no to Austin Matthews. I do think he's going to win the Rocket Richard, but I don't think he'll be as touted for the Hart Trophy as he was last season.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And if that one was predictable, anybody who doesn't like this is as close to unanimous as you're going to get for the Norris Trophy this year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Connor McDavid being the most dominant player in hockey when the playoffs ended. Cale Makar might be number 2 on that list right now. Obviously fantasy-wise, you might lean to some of the other forwards, whether it's Matthews or Draisaitl or Ovechkin still, whoever, depending on your category setup. But an actual starting a league from scratch, if the NHL threw all the names back in the hat and they pick teams tomorrow, I think Connor McDavid's number one. I would think that Cale Makar might be number two ahead of Austin Matthews. That's how dominant he is as a defenseman. And I think I said, Dean, that I would take Makar in the top 5 in a fantasy draft, and then I wouldn't take another defenseman probably in the top 20. So he's separated himself as the top offensive defenseman, but you watch him play one-on-one against Connor McDavid in that Colorado-Edmonton conference final. He's the one player that skates fast enough backwards to keep stride and thinks the game on the same level as McDavid. McDavid's super fast, but he's also thinking 2 steps ahead. Makar can keep up with him. So he's a shutdown defender as much as he is an offensive specialist. He's a great two-way player, and he has a great partner in Devin Taves. That's the NHL's top defense pairing by a mile, but Cale Makar for the Norris Trophy without a doubt.
I mean, Cale Makar could go on a really good run here. If the NHL gives the award to the player who should get it, like when Gretzky was winning Hart trophies over everybody, Cale Makar should go on like a Lidstrom, Dominic Hasek, Paul, like the guys that won the awards for years. He should be able to drop one of those 3-4 year runs as long as he's healthy of winning this award.
Yeah, him on defense and McDavid up front. I really think it's going to be those two. That's why I say if you were starting the NHL from scratch tomorrow and whatever team had first overall pick, I don't think you can't pick McDavid first. But at number 2, I think you can absolutely make a case in the real world to take Makar number 2 ahead of Matthews or Draisaitl or anybody else in the game. So I think Cale Makar is an absolute superstar coming off his first Stanley Cup win in that playoff performance. And he's a young guy. He's under 25. I think he's still just kind of realizing how good he can be. And I think offensively, that's where, I don't think he's going to score 50 goals as a defenseman, Dean, but I think he could, we saw Roman Josi hit 90 points last year. I wouldn't be surprised if Cale Makar has a 100-point season, whether it's this season or in the next couple. I think he's that good from the back end.
Paul Coffey at 47. That would be incredible if Cale Makar took a run at that, but at least 100 points would be something that we haven't seen from a blue liner. I mean, Yossi's season almost got like brushed to the side because Makar was so good, and 90 points is unbelievable. All right, so all the picks so far, I've agreed with you. This is where we disagree, and I'll preface this by saying I'm not bullish on any Tampa Bay player not named Kucherov this year because he's really the only guy who hasn't been all in on these runs. Stamkos was injured and didn't play somebody, but I think Stamkos, I think Hedman, I think Vasilevsky, who we're going to talk about next, I think a lot of these guys are taking a step backwards. Kucherov, because he hasn't played and he's on my team. I would never wish ill karma towards a guy on my fantasy team, but I'm not bullish on Tampa Bay players because it's got to catch up to you at some point. This is your pick for the Vezina. This is the first one we disagree on.
There's a lot of hard miles on that Tampa Bay roster. You're absolutely right, Dean. And they lost players from last season. They didn't really add this offseason. The cap continues to be a challenge there, having to extend guys going forward. But for me, with the fact that the roster isn't as strong, if Tampa's still going to win that Atlantic division, it's going to be, Vasilevsky gets forgotten about a lot because the forwards and the defense have been so good on Tampa that, he's just the goaltender. Well, now he's going to have to step up his game in order for Tampa to maintain that championship level. And I do think, a bit of an adrenaline dump, the hard miles catching up. I think in order for Tampa to be a division winner, a conference champion, in the regular season, a lot of it is going to ride on Vasilevsky. And although he's played a ton of hockey and, when does his body break down? He's such a big, strong man back in goal. And Brian Elliott might get a few more games this year. But I really think this is the year that Andrei Vasilevsky can establish himself as the real franchise player in Tampa. And the reason they are still a potential contender, they fell short of the three-peat, Dean, coming up against a juggernaut like the Colorado Avalanche. But I don't think that, again, the adrenaline dump factor is real, and maybe they're not as motivated now that they've won 2 cups and the core group is sort of getting a little older, but I really think Vasilevsky's the one guy who can make those big saves night in, night out, and keep Tampa as don't sleep on Tampa. They're still a force and a cutter, and I really think for the Vezina, I know there's a lot of other good Russian goaltenders around the league, but I really think Vasilevsky for me is the guy. This is the year he steps up and shows that as good as Stamkos and Kucherov and Point and Hedman are, I'm the reason Tampa's as good as the Lightning are, and I think Andrei Vasilevsky could win the Vezina. That would be the argument for him winning the Vezina, is that he is the best player in Tampa Bay.
Well, it could be you could be right. I mean, look at this guy. Who is this, Benjamin Button? Like, where did we get this photo from? His rookie year? Like, this guy looks like he's getting younger. The Tampa Bay Lightning have Benjamin Button in goal, and by the end of his career, he's going to look like he was just drafted. He looks like he's found the fountain of youth. So maybe you're right. I'm not sure. You know what I love, Larry? I love when people we talk about are watching. Listen to this tweet that I got at Duck Millard. No insecurity, maybe some eagerness to be seen. We are very proud of our off-season work and felt a 32 ranking was inconsistent with our retool. Big trade coming to. Just scratch us off your bottom 10 and put us in the playoff chase. Hashtag sail with the stars. That's from Cam Turner of the North Stars. I'm telling you, when you get upset because you're ranked 32, there's a little bit of insecurity and ego. I know you're eager, and I know you guys have improved, and I'm not saying you're 32, but when you get freaked out and worked out, like there was some upset people in that Telegram chat the other day I'm telling you, that means you're just not sure. And I love stirring the pot. You know that, Larry.
And I think, Dean, honestly, they look at their roster and they get, I'm not just saying the North Stars. I'm saying every NHL team, every year, you fall in love with your own team. You do, yes. Especially the NHL. You've drafted and developed your core, and the North Stars have made a ton of moves that they feel are upgrades. They wouldn't make trades unless they thought they were winning them. You look on paper, your depth chart, you feel like, hey, this is our year to challenge. And they made some big, impressive moves. Got guys like Logan Couture and, obviously they had Jason Robertson and Matt Duchene already. And they brought in a guy like Pajot, who's going to get a lot of shorthanded time on ice and some of the new categories. And their defense, I think, is going to have a ton of shorthanded time on ice that'll really bump them up. So new categories in the UFHL. There's a lot of balls in play, but I really think the North Stars improved. I think I had them at 31 last year and bumped them to 26. So, again, up 5 spots. They've made strides, but I don't think they're capable of challenging. And they have the misfortune of being stuck in that Gretzky division, Dean, which is the deepest division in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. It's 8 deep now because the North Stars are trying to compete. But, again, I think the Godfathers, the Monarchs, some of these other franchises took bigger steps forward this season. But I'll swing it back to you on the Vezina debate, because I went with Vasilevsky. I know you had another name in mind.
Yeah, Shesterkin. I think he takes over. And you know what? Kyle Hall last week, who bought the Warriors today, him and I were talking, and I didn't realize the Rangers had as good a mix of veterans and rookies as they do. I think they're going to win that division. I think they're I'll do my Stanley Cup predictions tomorrow, but I think the Rangers are going to be a real strong candidate for a Final Four team for me. And I think Shesterkin, I would take Shesterkin as the first goalie in a dynasty draft right now.
Yeah, he's. I mean, if Vasilevsky's number 1 for me, Shesterkin was number 2, and I mean he was in the Hart conversation last season already. So he's the best player in New York along with fellow Russian Panarin, and I'm interested to see how Vincent Trocheck fits in there. Obviously, that's a different look at second line center, and I think even though they're going to try and work that cap to try and reunite Artemi Panarin and Patrick Kane at the trade deadline as well, which would be huge for them if they could put Patrick Kane on that top line with Panarin and Zibanejad, or however they work that. They got Kreider in there too. They got a lot of talent, young defense, like you said, but strong young defense. Fox, Trouba, Miller, Keandre Miller. You saw the strides he made in the playoffs. He's going to be a beast. Young Zach Jones is good. Our UFFS digital athlete Braden Schneider is only going to be better. So the Rangers are definitely a force, and I think Carolina, Dean. Keep looking at that Carolina depth chart. They could have a third line potentially, Dean, of Jordan Stahl centering Paul Stastny and a healthy Max Pacioretty by Christmas. That's your third line. Those guys were first liners not too many years ago. It's a veteran line, but again, that top 6 in Carolina is awesome. Brent Burns added to the defense. I think Carolina I did have the Rangers winning that division, the Metro division, in my NHL predictions, but Carolina right there neck and neck with them. And I think we'll see that rematch in the playoffs again.
All right, let's get back to our fearless predictions and Matty Beniers. I don't think a lot went right for Seattle last year, right from the very start. I mean, the Bentley Jacks blew them out of the water when it came to the expansion and everything. But this is going to be a different story. They really look buttoned down defensively, so hint, Seattle goalies might be popular and valuable this year. And they got a couple of guys that could vie. We're going to feature Seattle later in our Dobber Hockey preview. They have a few guys that could vie for the Calder, including Mr. Matty Beniers, who, I think, obviously is a franchise player. And they got another guy, in my opinion, who is a franchise player. So I think while Seattle laid an egg last year, the two guys they have in Beniers and Wright, I would build a franchise around these guys any day.
Absolutely. Great 1-2 punch down the middle. I don't know if Shane Wright will be an everyday player in the NHL as a rookie, or if how Ron Francis is really going to try and ease him into the NHL. I know he said he expects him to spend the season in Seattle, but Matty Beniers played most of last year at Michigan and got some international tournaments in, and then came out and was a star down the stretch for Seattle. And you could tell in the preseason he's put on more muscle. I think he's even more explosive. He looks like a guy that can drive play as a true rookie this year. And I know Owen Power, his Michigan teammate's going to be up there in the Calder race. But I think if Matty Beniers can get Seattle within, 10 points of the wild card race, and that's a huge jump. And I think it's possible. I think Seattle's forward group now is at least 3 lines deep, but I think this year's Seattle team looks a lot like Vegas's expansion team. Four lines deep up front. You mentioned Philip Grubauer as a bounce back candidate. I'm definitely buying on that. I think that's one of the reasons why Brutes are going to be so much better in the UFHL and be a playoff team, because they have Philip Grubauer, and he went from Vezina candidate to worst goalie in the league. He's going to be somewhere in the middle at least. But I really think that they don't have a ton of their stars are their young guys, Beniers and Wright. But I just look at that forward group in Seattle, and you'll see it on the Dobber line combos today, Dean, how deep that team is. And you're going to be like, wow, maybe they can make a push. I mean, I think Vancouver, Vegas are still ahead of them in the push for a wild card spot, but I think Seattle's not that far behind. And if you really wanted a bold prediction, I'm not the guy to make it, but somebody's going to say Seattle's going to make the playoffs. EA Sports, they ran their simulator, their playoff simulation, which tends to have pretty good results. They picked Seattle as a playoff team. So EA's made the bold prediction. I think some other, between today and tomorrow when more predictions come out, I think somebody's going to step up and say Seattle's my boldest prediction as a playoff team, thanks to a guy like Matty Beniers, and they might just be right, Dean. I'm not sleepless on Seattle.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It will be an interesting to see. Those rookies are going to be a fascinating study in how they bring those guys along. All right, Coach of the Year is the Jack Adams Trophy, and you're all in on the Oilers, which we know you're a big Oilers fan. I have a hard time disagreeing with this pick because he has so many great weapons at his disposal. He seems to really have the buy-in from the players, and they have a goaltender, which I do not think they've had. And that's one thing an Oiler coach, in my opinion, in a long time has not had.
And Jay Woodcroft won the poll for best looking coach in the NHL. So we had to get him on. We had to get him on a graphic, Dean. Best looking coach in the NHL, Jay Woodcroft. But I also think, Dean, I love when coaches can add insight in their post game interviews, pregame. Again, obviously, if things start going a little sideways, it'll be interesting to see how he handles the adversity. But as far as his conferences and his knowledge, his insight into the game, I love the way Jay Woodcroft thinks the game. I love what he's done with Dylan Holloway in the preseason, giving him the top 6 push, and the fact he's potentially starting with Draisaitl and Hyman. I think that's great. I think he's confident in his young guys. He knows a lot of them from Bakersfield. So he's been in the system for a while. I think he's been ready to be an NHL coach for a long time. He finally got that opportunity, taking over midseason from Dave Tippett. Obviously took the Oilers to the conference final last year. Like you said, Mike Smith had some up and down moments in the playoffs. I thought Jack Campbell was great against Tampa Bay for Toronto in that playoff series, including Game 7. He was save for save with Vasilevsky. I think that's a huge confidence boost for Campbell in Toronto. Game 7, the pressure of that game. And yeah, as long as McDavid and Draisaitl stay healthy, I really think Edmonton now has 3 scoring lines with Nugent Hopkins on that third line. And again, I think the defense, a guy like Brett Kulak's really impressed me ever since he got to Edmonton. I think he could be a bona fide top 4 guy. And I really think Ken Holland, again, whether it's Jacob Chychrun as a defenseman, whether it's Patrick Kane as a forward, I think the Oilers feel this is their first of 4 years. Draisaitl has 3 years left on his deal. McDavid has 4 years left. This is the window to win. I think they're all in, and I think a big part of the success starts with the coaching staff and starts with Jay Woodcroft. So I really do think he's going to contend for the Jack Adams as the NHL's Coach of the Year.
One thing we should point out, fantasy GMs, NHL teams, and fans fall in love with their own teams as well. I hope Kulak works out that way. I just hope it wasn't just an excitement of a playoff run and he reverts to a bottom pairing guy. But you're right. And I'm not a fan of the 3 scoring lines. I just want to see Nugent Hopkins in that top 6 and load up your top 6. But we'll see. We'll probably see a lot of that throughout the year at different times. It's not like, name me one coach in hockey history who has ever stuck with any kind of lines or anything. So the blender will come out as it does with every coach. And we had the Mac-T blender. We had the McClellan blender, and we'll see the Woodcroft blender as well at some point. All right, so that's the player awards and the individual awards, we should say, coaches as well. Let's get to some team predictions now. And I asked you for one team in the playoffs and one team out of the playoffs in each conference. You gave me a little bit more. I only had room on the graphic for this, but you can go with some of the other teams that you think will make it in and out in the conference as well.
Yeah, I'll start in the West because I only have the one there. I really think Bruce Boudreau's track record in the regular season, Dean, he's well above 500. He's one of the he might still have the winningest regular season coaching percentage. I think he'll find a way to get the Vancouver Canucks into that playoff mix. And somebody has to fall out, so I took the Dallas Stars out. No disrespect to Pete DeBoer and the young talent they're breaking in Dallas, but I think Vancouver could be the team that comes in the West. And then over in the East, Dean, I'll focus on these two for sure. The Florida Panthers, reigning President's Trophy winners. If you're looking for a bold prediction, Florida going from President's Trophy winner to out of the playoffs is certainly bold, especially if Aaron Ekblad was to suffer another injury. I think that defense is in trouble. I'm not a huge Paul Maurice fan. I think there's a goaltending controversy brewing already, and so many new faces up front. It's going to be interesting how the chemistry shakes out. Vice on the other side, I think the Columbus Blue Jackets, Dean. I don't know on the coaching front how things will work there with a relatively new head coach still and not a big personality like John Tortorella. But I really think the talent on paper, the Blue Jackets bringing in, now Patrick Laine extended. I think he's primed for a 50-goal season. If someone's going to take a run at Austin Matthews, it might be Patrick Laine. In all honesty, he might be my number 2 for the Rocket Richard. Johnny Gaudreau obviously being there now. Among other additions, I really like Columbus. I think Columbus makes the playoffs. And I kind of added a couple more, Dean. I had, I think Washington and Boston might miss the playoffs as well. 2 more kind of bold predictions. I'm really on the bandwagon of the Ottawa Senators and the Detroit Red Wings on that upstart Atlantic. And I don't think the Buffalo Sabres are too far behind. Had they done something a little different with their goaltending, I might have had them in the playoff mix as well. But I love the parity in both these leagues. And so I'm taking 4 new playoff teams in the NHL, Dean, and 5 new playoff teams in the UFHL. So pretty crazy. If we get between the 2 leagues, you have 9 new playoff teams out of 18. That's half the playoff field would change over from one year to the next. So, that'd be 9 out of 32. But yeah, still a big prediction to see that many new playoff teams in either league.
Yeah, that would be, movement is good. Movement is good every year, and it forces teams not to be stagnant, and you can't be stagnant in the NHL or the UFHL. So when it comes to the final, you can tell us how each team gets there as far as the final 4, but here is your final 2, and then you can tell us who you think wins the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Dean, I got the Edmonton Oilers again. I think Jay Woodcroft showed in the playoffs last year, especially in that Calgary series. He knows his in-game management is a skill. He can tell when guys are hot, when guys are feeling it, and guys when he knows when to start that blender and which buttons to press. So I really think Edmonton is the team to beat in the West. I think although Colorado, defending champion, hard to say they're not the team to beat. I really think on paper, and again, maybe this is the homer growing up in a family of Oiler fans, but I think Edmonton is a better team on paper outside of the defense. Colorado gets the big check mark for defense, but forwards and goaltending, I side with Edmonton. I think they have more depth up front and certainly a more steady, proven goaltender now that I think Edmonton could beat Colorado in a rematch in the Western Conference Final. And the Eastern Conference, Dean, I have a rematch in the East. My Final Four, even though I predicted 4 new playoff teams in the NHL, my Final Four is the same as last year. No suspense there. I have Tampa again beating the Rangers in that Vasilevsky-Shesterkin Russian goaltending duel. Again, I took Vasilevsky for the business, so I really think Tampa-Edmonton in the final. And my winner, Dean, is the Edmonton Oilers, the 2023 Stanley Cup champions. Edmonton over Tampa Bay in 7 games. Game 7 would be in Edmonton. I think Edmonton has more regular season points than Tampa Bay this year. I think Edmonton wins that Pacific Division and goes on to win the Stanley Cup.
Wow. Well, as the Haunch said, not surprising, it would be Edmonton that you would pick. And listen, I have a hard time disagreeing with you. I grew up an Oilers fan. I would like to see the Winnipeg Jets have more success. But when I look at this Oilers roster, you could have 2 50-goal scorers on it. The depth is there. If they get the goaltending, if Broberg can step in and Bouchard, there's some ifs. Every team has some ifs. I think the Oilers have more ifs than the Calgary Flames, personally. But it's going to be fun. The Battle of Alberta is back after we all thought it was dead when Tkachuk wanted out. So I think that's the great thing about this offseason is teams that you thought sucked or were going to suck, like Ottawa and Montreal, they got better. There's teams that took a step back for sure, but right now is when optimism reigns supreme for all 32 NHL and all 32 UFHL teams, so they should enjoy it while they can.
Absolutely, Dean, and I think we'll have some surprises this year. Even though I have the same Final Four, I think there'll be surprises along the way, both in the NHL and the UFHL. I think we'll see some new playoff teams. I think we'll see some breakout stars, and I just can't wait for the season to start, Dean. This is, like I said, this is Christmas Eve, and wishing all the best and all the success to all 32 franchises in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League this season, including Duckman's domination. I hope you guys can make things interesting in that Legends Conference and within the OR division.
Yeah, well, we might have to hit up Kyle Hall. Everybody's for sale, so we'll have to. Sounds like a wrestling slogan or something. We'll have to hit up Kyle. But Larry, awesome to chat with you again. We wouldn't be here without the amazing work you did. I hope we certainly get things back on track and we can do this more regularly again. But everybody misses you, man. So thanks so much for joining us. Don't be a stranger, and enjoy the season starting tomorrow.
Sounds good, Dean. Thanks for having me again, and all the best this season.
You betcha. There's Larry Fisher, the insider for UFHL teams, the encyclopedia of knowledge, and so fun to talk. Like, we went so much longer than I have to apologize to Larry later. We went way later than I expected. So just now, I got to roll into our previews because we got Jamie Thomas coming up in 12 minutes. So let's get right to it. Larry said the Kraken are going to be better than you think. Well, that's not hard. They weren't good last year. And when he referred to them as being closer to that Vegas team than maybe the Seattle team from last year, I think he's right. I mean, when you look at this roster, I think Matty Beniers has a real opportunity to do some special things in the league this year. As Larry had pointed out, he thinks he's going to win the Calder Trophy. I think that Matty Beniers could end up leading this team in scoring. Some things certainly need to go right, but I certainly think that's a possibility. Oliver Bjorkstrand is an interesting player who has had some success, was a terrific junior player in Portland, and maybe this is the opportunity where he's going to get to play with Matty Beniers, most likely, to start the season. And I like Vince Dunn. I like Vince Dunn as another guy who was buried behind other guys in St. Louis at times. So again, I don't know if this team is going to be massively offensive. The sleeper for me is Philip Grubauer because I think they are going to be better defensively. Grubauer signed that big deal after a season in Washington, did not have a good season, especially in fantasy. And my breakout player is Shane Wright, especially if you look at these lineups in the Dobber Hockey Fantasy Guide, which we gave away last week. It is awesome. I look at Shane Wright with the potential to play second power play and third line minutes and really, really get sheltered minutes. I mean, Matty Beniers is going to take on every top player the other team has, and that's what he is going to be. Ron Francis is in Seattle. Matty Beniers could be their Ron Francis, a guy that, you know, Ron Francis is one of the top 5 scorers of all time, but also could absolutely check everything and your hat all night long. So I think Beniers it's going to be interesting. You might see Yanni Gourde taking some minutes off of him at different times. I like Jaden Schwartz as a potential sleeper. Jordan Eberle playing with Shane Wright could be a fun connection. So I'm liking this. Larry likes the Burakovsky, Wenberg, Bjorkstrand line. Justin Schultz, an opportunity to get some second power play time, and then, like I said, Philip Grubauer. This could be the year for him. You know, I'm not bullish on the Kraken to make the playoffs, but I do like their potential. I hope John Hayden gets some playing time, but it's a much better looking team this year, and we'll see certainly what happens with the Kraken. They'll go this year as their young players go. And that means, like, I'm not saying it's all on them. I'm just saying, like, I think you know what you're going to get from guys like Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand. If Beniers, if Wright, if Wenberg, if some of these younger players can step up, they can make a difference. But certainly, they can make a difference in your fantasy team. Now, here's a club on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to fantasy. And this is a plug-and-play Stanley Cup contender and fantasy contender if you target their players. My opinion, the St. Louis Blues are one of the best built teams in the NHL and in fantasy. I mean, that top line could be absolutely bonkers for how good they could be. Tarasenko, Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. They could all be 80-point guys. Ryan O'Reilly does everything well in fantasy and puts up close to 70 points. I mean, this is a good team. Forwards, you got top 9 potential. Well, Klim Kostin is gone now. He was traded to the Oilers. But you still have top 9 potential. You have terrific blue liners, and Jordan Binnington is a good goaltender that wins games. It's interesting, the Dobber Hockey is predicting Thomas Greiss to take away quite a few of those wins. I don't see that. I think Binnington is a 30-win, 35-win guy. I love this St. Louis team. I think they are built to win again. So if you are looking at a team, and some people like to do this. They like to take pairs and teams and things. Load up on the Blues. I think you're 3 lines deep on this team. And at least, you know, Perinovich is going to be out with surgery. That sucks. But you're 3 lines and 2 pairs deep and a goalie. I love the Blues. I think they're a great hockey team. They're well coached. They're hard to play against. They have skill. Bullish on the Blues and the Rangers. Maybe that's a hint of my Stanley Cup final. I don't know. I don't want to get too carried away. but it's impressive. So, once again, here's Larry Fisher's power rankings. Then here's the belly up power rankings that got everybody upset, including the North Stars at 32. My. Like, I don't think we should be 12. I don't think we should be that high. I just love it. And here's Kyle Hall's rankings, and he is now an owner. Where did he rank the team he bought? 22. I don't think they're better than us. So, anyway, I love the rankings. I love it when we're ranked low because it gives us, we tack it up in the Duckman's Domination bulletin board. And it's fuel. Give me fire, you know? But seriously, if you take these rankings too seriously, you'll drive yourself crazy. You really will. And Larry's right. You always fall in love with your own players, man. Everybody fall. I do. You should see the expectations I have. And I talk to Craig Button every week about this. Manage your expectations. When you draft a player, manage them. When you sign a player, have realistic expectations. If you don't do that in fantasy or in real hockey, you're going to be disappointed more times than not. So, get realistic expectations and be smart about it. So much variety in the power rankings. Wow, fun to be looked back on them. It will be fun. That's from Larry. Blues versus the Blue Shirts would be an interesting final. It would be. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we'll see if that's my prediction when time comes tomorrow. All right, when we return, Jamie Thomas is going to join us. We're going to talk a lot about the National Football League. Here's the question of the day. Who is underrated in fantasy football right now? Nick T. VIP threw out Geno Smith. He is absolutely right. I said Saquon Barkley because he was outside of the top 10 for most ADPs, and he's basically top 2, top 3 running back right now behind Nick Chubb. And in our top 3, just simply asking who are the top 3 NFL teams 6 weeks in. I got the Eagles. I almost said the Beagles. I combined them. The Eagles, the Bills, and the 49ers. I don't have the Chiefs because they're playing tonight. I don't think it's fair because they haven't played 6 weeks. If this question was asked tomorrow, they will likely be in there. But right now, through 6 weeks, I like the 49ers. I like what Jimmy G is doing. He might not be winning you your fantasy league, but he might win the 49ers the NFC. Eagles 49ers would be a pretty awesome conference final. Other news today, Matt Rule fired as Carolina Panthers head coach. Last in quarterback rating, last in offensive efficiency, last in yards per game. 25 straight games they lost when giving up 17 points, which I'm sorry is not a lot of points. I'm sorry, it's not a lot of points. And by the way, if you want to make a bet on the Monday Nighter, we have some cool prop bets to throw your way. If you want to make a bet, head to @DuckMillard on Twitter. Use the link in my bio @DuckMillard to get a 125% bonus when you use that link. And then you can go and make some prop bets. Here's some prop bets we found. Pat Mahomes, 279.5 passing yards. I think it's safe that he covers that. Take the over. Josh Jacobs, 59.5 rushing yards. I think that's a no-brainer. He's the only guy running the ball. McCole Hardman, 21.5 receiving yards. This is one that I am torn on. I'm saying under. Mac Hollins, 30.5 receiving yards. Or Mac Hollins, 30.5 receiving yards. Take the under on that. And Juju Smith-Schuster, 52.5 receiving yards. Take the over on that one. So a few prop bets to get you going for tonight's contest. The Monday Nighter between the Chiefs and the Raiders. When we come back, my good friend Jamie Thomas will join us, and we will dive into the weekend that was totally wild when it came to baseball. This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. We're back in a second. It is just after 5:21 in the Eastern time zone. In the Mountain time zone, it is 3:22. That's how we do math on this when it comes to time zone. I have a giant chart in front of me so I can try to never forget the time zone changes. But some wild changes in the NFL. Well, I guess not really wild, because Jamie Thomas predicted it last week with Matt Rule getting fired, the first coach to be fired in the National Hockey League. So that was pretty impressive that he was able to do that. But now, Matt Rule, the Carolina Panthers are terrible. They're last in, I pointed out all those different categories that they are last in. Last when it comes to quarterback rating, offensive efficiency, yards per game. They lost 25 games in a row when allowing 17 points. That's not a lot of That's not a lot of points, man. That is not a lot of points. As I bring in, I got to get the camera up here, my good friend, Jamie Thomas.
My man.
My man joining us. And you called it last week. You said this guy's going to be the first guy fired. And when you look at those numbers, it's not really surprising. They were terrible.
Sorry, there's like a mini earthquake going through my house here as I try and adjust my camera to fit the screen here. Hold on.
There we go. There you're golden. You're golden, pony boy.
Yeah, I'm so glad I was accurate on who was going to get fired first. I went to bed last night, woke up this morning going, I am so thankful that I can predict which coach is going to get fired first. So thank you for pointing that out to everybody. And it was almost like an obvious thing, right? Whatever Carolina did, they just never looked like they're going in the right direction at all. So David Tepper, the owner, has some serious work ahead of him as he tries to restore the Carolina Panthers to a half-decent franchise. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but unfortunately for Matt Rule, his NFL calling is not there, but I'm sure he'll have a college job sometime down the road here.
Yeah, and it's just college coaches struggle in the NHL. It's like rinse and repeat. It happens very, very often because, as you mentioned, personalities are totally different. So not surprising, I don't think, there, and we'll see what else happens. But, man, baseball was ridiculous over the weekend. Like, listen, the wild card format is a win for me. I know some teams might not like it, but it's better than one game. I thought it was terribly exciting, and I think the only thing that would be better is if you could somehow go do some home and homes, but the travel is just too crazy to do that. But now we have a bit better of a postseason picture. So let's talk about the three things you learned from the Major League Wild Card weekend.
Yeah, the format was incredible. And I was all for, that one game playoff for the wild card spot to get into the playoffs. That was fantastic on the Tuesday and the Wednesday after the regular season. But if you're going to add more teams in and you want more drama, one game just isn't enough. So the fact that they did it, all three games in one team's building or stadium, and the fact that 3 road teams won. So that disputes the whole the home team advantage thing. Well, if you finish higher than somebody, there's got to be some advantage someplace. But it didn't work out for 3 of the 4 home teams, and there was drama every night. And I know, you look at Cleveland, Tampa Bay, it was a sweep, but they're both decided by 1 run, and one of them was in 15 innings, and it was a walk-off. So there was plenty of drama to be found. We don't really need to go over the Blue Jays, what happened to them, but that's drama. If you're a Seattle Mariners fan or a fan of baseball and comebacks, that was amazing. And then just to have a series for the New York Mets and to have them in there, and it was the only 3-game series that went down. It had all kinds of drama. So, and the fact that the Mets, and I know I'm going to get this in a second, but you can't win a series where Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom are your first 2 starters.
Yeah,
I mean that's so Mets. That is so New York Mets, but it's still that's number 3. I don't want to jump the format here at all, but the format rocked. It was amazing, and let's do it again next year. So that was fantastic. Analytics suck in baseball. Analytics, for the most part, I'm not a big fan of. I still understand its place in sports. There's the nerd herd here in Winnipeg that work for the Jets. They do a fantastic job. But when it comes to polling, Kevin Gossman was brought in for this type of situation to win the big game. He got the 2 outs, and you want him to close out the inning, and just the overthinking that goes on in something that doesn't need to happen. A guy's making 18 to 19 million. That's his job, to finish off the deal. So why are you? And I understand his replacement didn't give up a whole lot of home runs, and it just sucks. Gossman got those. He had to load the bases, got the 2 outs, and then you pull him from the game, and that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm sure Schneider will be sitting there looking at this a little bit later, maybe overthinking this, but that's why analytics suck. And then last but not least, the Mets, man, they're left to wonder. Like it was a magical ride for them all year long. They spent a lot of money. The ownership group has kind of got things right. It was exciting in New York. They had home field advantage. I already said Scherzer and DeGrom on the mound, and that's just seemed that should be enough to win a best out of 3 series. But I think if you're any team and anybody that was eliminated in the wild card round, it's the Mets. And it sucks what happened to the Blue Jays, and there's lots of what ifs, but that team was built to me to win in the postseason in the New York Mets, and they didn't do it. And that to me was the biggest failure. But you can't be upset in postseason baseball because it's the best teams. Mm-hmm. So I understand that the Padres didn't have the best record and they struggled after they made the big trade and everything, but it's still, you can't be upset how those things happen because just anything can happen, and someone's pitching can be unreal one day. And even though you're looking behind their ears for whatever it is, or any type of illegal substances. But that, I understand when people get frustrated, but it's the best teams that are left over. Your team's not always going to win. And it's terrible what happened to Blue Jays to be up 8-1. But you just didn't – when you were watching that game, did you feel comfortable? I did not. Like if I'm sitting there going 8-1, okay, it's still lots of time left. But when that home run went over to make it 8-4, I'm like, not so fast, my friend. And the way the Mariners had fought and clawed their way back in the playoff picture, that's the last team you want to be sitting there ahead of in that format. So I don't know, man. I've just seen so many things melt apart in the Toronto market. You just never feel comfortable.
Well, the Mets, first of all, they blew the division. So they have nobody to blame but themselves. They blew the division with Scherzer and DeGrom, and then they lost this series with Scherzer and DeGrom against the Padres team that did everything to not make the playoffs. So the Mets have nobody to blame but themselves. And I don't know what you're talking about. How did you not think it was over at 8-1? Like, I didn't even, when he went out and took out Gossman, I didn't even think it was going to matter because it was 8-1. Sure, he shouldn't have done it. It's Kevin Cash all over again. Remember Kevin Cash? That's why the Dodgers have a title, because he went with the analytics instead of the feel. My father-in-law, we were talking about it last night, and he said, does no manager manage by feel anymore? And I don't know. It's certainly when decisions like that are made, it seems like the feel is taken out of the game.
I don't even know if guys manage anymore in baseball. I truly don't. I just think they're a face half the time. Decisions are being made for them most of the time. And there are a lot of managers in baseball that have a ton of experience, Buck Showalter, that don't need help. I'm sorry. In some situations, sure, if you're unfamiliar with something, but Buck Showalter has seen everything. Yeah. Like I'll even use Rick Bowness. What hasn't he seen?
Yeah. That expansion team to Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah.
Right. And how many different teams has he coached? He's been all over the NHL. He's played, and I just don't know with a decision like that. So I don't know. I think I've just seen too many meltdowns of all varieties for the Blue Jays, and they're young, and just what you can just tell where Seattle's a little bit different than they were. They just had something going on, and Toronto fought off a bunch of slumps during the season, but I just think they're still too young to be able to handle when things go wrong and sideways when they should feel entirely comfortable. I just think they were pressing too hard. We don't need to, Bo Bichette. I don't know why you're going into the outfield when to me that's the center fielder's ball. Yeah. I can go down the list of the things that happen.
You're panicking.
Yeah, that's what young players do, and it's it's natural. You're not born with nerves of steel in that situation when you haven't been in it enough. That's what experience is. So, I mean, as soon as those things happen to younger teams, that's just what sports is. Experience is everything in every situation.
Well, Vlad Guerrero was right. The trailer was last year. This year was the movie, but nobody knew it was going to be a horror movie that was going to end so badly. But it is October, so 'tis the season. All right, so the baseball double now. This is an easy one. 2 teams you think are going to be in the World Series.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the American League. And I know the romantic way to think of this would be the New York Yankees, but Houston, to me, you got Justin Verlander starting game 1 of the ALDS, and he's on 6 days rest. And I think his numbers are just disgusting when he has that much rest. So it's already 1-0 for Houston when that series. And I know Seattle, it's a great story, and they came back and they fought their way in the playoffs, but no, it's just Bregman and Jose Altuve had an incredible second half. Those two at the top of the Astros order are dangerous. They'll cause problems for Seattle. They'll cause problems for whoever they play in the American League Championship Series. It just seems like Houston is meant. They're the best team in the American League. I don't think there's any question about it. And the Dodgers, to me, there's 3 reasons. And I'm going by first name, Mookie, Trey, and Freddie. Those 3 at the top of the Dodgers order are wreckers. Like you can't get through all 3 of them without damage being done. And if I look further down the road, the Dodgers' top 3 starters, or the way they're going right now, are all lefties, and the Astros hit the crap out of lefties this year. But we're not going to talk about the prediction who's going to win this whole thing. It's just Dodgers and Astros. They're playing into November. I don't see how this goes any differently. Sure, the Padres are building off a lot of momentum right now, but the Dodgers beat the crap out of them in the regular season. They're in their heads. They're going to need – Yu Darvish is going to have to be unreal for them to even have a hope. And I get that they built this roster for this situation to go head-to-head with the Dodgers, but please, move over. Like Juan Soto, yeah, okay, it was a great trade. You kind of started to turn things around a little bit. But, man, I'm sorry. It's just the big brothers in California beat on the little brother. It's science. That's what's going to happen. Dodgers, Astros, book it. Don't put your house on the line or anything like that, but just Dodgers and Astros.
Well, it's the revenge tour too, right? You've got Dodgers, Yankees, and they've got a great series coming out about the 78 to 80 Dodgers Yankees rivalry with Reggie. So that storyline is great. Or you have the give us our trophy that you stole back in 2017 against the. So it's a great story as long as the Dodgers get there. And 111 wins. This is the quietest 111 win team I've been hearing about because there were so many other incredible stories. Nobody was talking about just how the Dodgers were just absolutely just destroying teams down the stretch, including the Padres.
Yeah, and I think the home run, things that were going on with Aaron Judge, of course, and Albert Pujols, that totally distracted everybody to how dominant a season this was for the Dodgers. And maybe people are just like, oh, it's just the Dodgers again. I don't know. It's the same way Connor McDavid's like, oh, Connor McDavid's the best player in hockey again. I don't know if he should be the Hart Trophy winner, but that's another debate for another time because I just get mad when people try and tell me anything differently about that situation. It's like, oh, I can't. I'll just go on a tangent.
60 goals. Yeah, whatever.
60 goals. Yeah, forget it. Anyways.
I'm with you. Okay.
He's going to score 70 this year, Dean. Did you know that? Did you know he's going to score 70 this year? How can you stop him?
If he does score 70, then I would probably look to it, unless McDavid has like 180 points or something like that. So
yeah.
Anyway, those guys aren't underrated, but there is our question of the day was who's an underrated fantasy football player. This is a great choice that you have here, Ramondre Stevenson of the Patriots. I mean, I said it, if you were in a coma for the last 10 years and you woke up and looked at the AFC East standings, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? Why are the Patriots sucking? But they're not sucking when it comes to fantasy production from the RB23 and CBS Standard Leagues.
Right. And Ramondre's, like, I'm only saying this because of what's going on right now. And I'm not saying underrated from a whole, piece of the pie thing situation. I'm talking about right now, only because, as you know, anybody to do with a New England Patriot running back, you want to stay the hell away from in fantasy football. It's just because it's just the running back by committee. But it's war of attrition right now because there's guys like Damian Harris is nicked up. Ramondre Stevenson is the only healthy guy right now, and you saw it yesterday. New England went up against the top scoring offense in football, and I can't believe I'm saying it. It's hard to say without smiling. The Detroit Lions had the best offense in football heading into yesterday's game. They get shut out in total Lion fashion. And you know what? They just kept giving the rock to Ramondre Stevenson. And if they don't have that running back by committee, this is a guy they're leaning on. Zappy was their starting quarterback. So what are you going to do if you're Bill Belichick? You're going conservative, and you're going to run the football, and you're going to lean on your defense. And that's exactly what happened. And that's pretty much what the formula is going to be for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots for the rest of this season, because Mac Jones gets a little bit better, but they just do not have a good offense. They have a great defense, and if they can control the game on the ground and eat up some clock, which they're going to do with Ramondre Stevenson, you might have yourself a little blue chip player week after week, as long as Damian Harris stays out of the picture in New England.
All right, the NHL season is on us tomorrow. You, of course, are part of the Winnipeg Jets radio broadcast in the Central Division, and one of the teams we focused on today was the St. Louis Blues. And I think this team is dominant, man. Like, this team is built to win and beat you up and provide a lot of fantasy talent. I mean, like Braden Shen and Ryan O'Reilly, these guys are second and third line gems in fantasy, and you get to see this Blues team a lot. How good are they in person?
They're just – I recall a game when they came to Winnipeg last year, Dino, and it was, overtime, 3-on-3 is fantastic. It was the first time I've seen it in a long time. They didn't have a lot of chances, but all they did was control the puck. It was actually pretty frustrating to watch because if they didn't like what they saw, they would just go back in the neutral zone. Ryan O'Reilly would swoop back. Jordan Kyrou would swoop back. Robert Thomas, they would just keep going into the offensive zone. Oh, I don't like it. They'd go back to the offensive zone. It was all about puck possession. I don't even know if the Jets touched the puck that much outside of Connor Hellebuck. They end up winning the game. But you're right. They are big. There's a reason why I believe the Jets will end up going with Logan Stanley and Dylan Sandberg and Saku Menelainen on their roster. They need size because the Central Division is heavy. St. Louis is one of those reasons. The Jets play St. Louis the third week of October, their third home game of the month. And those games are something else to watch. There's lots of stuff going on at all time, even if it's a 1-0 game. There's great goaltending. There's lots of hitting. They don't like each other. They're some of the funnest games that I get to watch. But St. Louis is a legit, Stanley Cup contender, somebody the Jets are going to have to deal with and beat if they want to get in that top three in the Central Division in order to get a better positioning in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But it is going to be a lot of fun. You got Nashville, you got St. Louis, you got the Jets, you got Dallas. Colorado, like Dallas, we won't even talk about the other three because they're just not worth talking about. But those five are going to make things very interesting throughout the regular season. And I think that the Central could very well have 5 teams again in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's the most competitive division. I think it's so tough. And, the Blues are a team, like if you're brand new to hockey, I tried to get Mooch to take the Blues. He ended up going with Detroit, which is, hey, that's a good franchise as well. Stevie Y, Original Six. But I tried to get him to go with the Blues because they're not the most popular. St. Louis isn't the biggest market, but they had such a great story with Gloria when they won the Cup and Berube.
Yeah.
And this team is tight and fun to watch. So if you're new to hockey, the St. Louis Blues are a great team to say, I'm going to watch these guys because you're going to be entertained. And correct me if I'm wrong, that building is pretty fun to be in.
Oh, it's a great building, and it was that building where Patrick Laine had his 5-goal game too.
That's right.
I've been to St. Louis enough time. A great hockey city, like great fans. They're a heavy team. They're built to play deep into May. That's how this team is built. Great coaching staff. Like it's a well-run organization. One of the Jets' top rivals. So a lot of respect for the St. Louis Blues. And if you want to go anywhere in the Central, you got to get through St. Louis.
Okay, so lastly, you just brought up Laine. We had Larry Fisher on earlier, and he said if Laine, yeah, exactly, the encyclopedia, hockey encyclopedia. And for kids that don't know what an encyclopedia is, just ask your parents because there's no encyclopedias anymore. Like
they might have one in the basement. You never know.
What happened to encyclopedia salesmen? Like they just don't exist anymore. It's weird.
I know.
But anyway,
you can't even lie to your kids anymore, Dino, because they just look up stuff online. Before you can just say, just look it up in the encyclopedia.
Yeah,
the Encyclopedia Britannica will have all your answers.
Go get A, and we'll go through A. We'll start at alligator, and then we'll go through the list or whatever. Yeah. But Laine,
all in.
Yeah, Laine. Larry thinks Laine could get 50. Johnny Gaudreau's there. You've seen Patrick Laine. Obviously, maybe one of the streakiest scorers. I mean, that one year he had so many in November and then not anymore. Do you think Laine has the potential to get 50?
He always does. As long as, Johnny Gaudreau will change a lot of things for him. Somebody to actually get him the puck. They do have a lot of skill in Columbus. You have to wonder if there's enough where they can just focus on, Jacob Vorkacek's always there to help out and so on and so forth. But I think Laine will always have that ability if he can stay healthy and B, somebody's feeding him the puck properly. Because I'm sorry, there hasn't been for Laine. He doesn't have Blake Wheeler feed him those beautiful passes through the seam right now. And I know that could change with Johnny Gaudreau. I hope so because he is so much fun to watch, and even in a one-on-one situation, anything can happen. He is one of those guys where you could pay money to. It's unfortunate things didn't work out here, but the Jets have some pretty good players thanks to that trade, and they'll go on from it. But Patrick Laine will always be one of my favorite players to watch.
Beauty, my man. Enjoy the game tonight. This is going to be a fun game. I mean, my fantasy matchup tonight, I've got both running backs, Jacobs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I'm going up against Mahomes and Waller. So, I'm sweating because it's close. This is a great Monday Night Football matchup just to watch, and I'd imagine there's a lot of fantasy matchups on the line going into this game with so many weapons.
Yeah, especially with Patrick Mahomes, who just feasts on the Raiders. So there will be a lot of points tonight. There will be a lot of close finishes, especially for you in your game as well. But man, it's anytime it's the Raiders and Chiefs, it's so much fun. Still love that Christmas commercial from NFL.com. Remember the one with the guy is dating a girl, who's going to dinner to meet the girl's parents, and they're all Chiefs fans. He's wearing the Raiders sweater, and the lights go on. She's like, "Shut it off! Shut it off!" He's like, "I can't."
It keeps lighting because they keep getting touchdowns. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know. One of the best commercials ever.
Yeah. It'll be an entertaining game tonight. Thanks as always, my man. Enjoy the season that gets underway, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, see you next Monday, pal.
You betcha. There's Jamie Thomas of Jets TV and the executive director of our Twitch channel here at UFF Sports. Always fun to catch up. What a good day today. Larry Fisher, Jamie Thomas. It's Canadian Thanksgiving, Monday Night Football tonight, the eve of the Stanley Cup season. Man, is it going to be awesome.
My man.
That was my man, Jamie Thomas, who just joined us on the show. All right. We've been going steady here. Let me take a quick break, get a drink of water. We'll come back, get into some prop bets and more when we return after this. .47 in the East. Thanks so much for being a part of Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. My name is Dean Millard. Pleasure to have you aboard. We'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same channel. 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports. You can also catch the replay on our YouTube channel, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, and in audio podcast format, wherever you get the best podcast from. Our question of the day: who is underrated right now in fantasy football? I went with Saquan Barkley. He's doing everything. He's taking direct snaps. He's running the ball. He's catching the ball. He was obviously not a very high drafted running back in ADPs when you were doing your drafts, but he has certainly shot up to an RB2, only behind Nick Chubb in standard formats. Also, through 6 weeks, who are your top teams? I didn't put the Chiefs on here, as I mentioned, because they're playing tonight against the Raiders. We'll get to some prop bets in a second. But I like the Eagles, Bills, and 49ers. I really like everything the 49ers have, including their quarterback, because he doesn't make mistakes. So I'm riding the Jimmy G train, and I think the 49ers can ride it to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl appearance will be a phenomenal game if they go up against the Eagles, because both teams have terrific defense. Matt Rule, the first head coach fired today in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers, awful. How do you lose 25 games in a row when you only give up 17 points? That's not a lot of points. They got smoked 37-17 by the Niners. By the way, Draymond Green, he's stepping away from the Golden State Warriors after he punched Jordan Poole in the face in practice. I don't know if you saw this or not, this video. It was wild. Green has said, quote, "I failed as a man and failed as a leader." So he's stepping away from the team to get things figured out. Monday Night Football, some prop bets for you. Take the over on Mahomes. I think he puts up 300. Josh Jacobs, I would take the over. I think he puts up at least 70. I would take the under for McCole Hardman and Mac Hollins. And Juju Smith-Schuster, I think Mahomes hits him for 65 tonight. So there's that. If you want to bet responsibly, head to @DuckMillard on Twitter. Click the link in my bio and get 125% bonus when you make your first deposit. And, of course, Major League Baseball will return tomorrow with the divisional games. Big matchups in UFLB. Trying to find the graphic here. Cavalry took out the Black Bears. Well, I guess we know which Black Bear is better now. It's the Devil Bears. Or which bear is better? It would be the Devil Bears because the Black Bears got knocked out. Tough break. The Reapers will play host to the Woodpeckers, who took out the Wild Boars. The Prairie Wheat Sox, the number one team, the Branch Rickey champions, will take on the Defenders, who knocked out Northern Fury. And it's the Isotopes winning over Moonshots. They'll face White Walkers. That one, those will all start tomorrow. I think the draft is actually tonight that they are doing. So good luck to all UFLB teams as well. All right, so when you look at the National Football League, that call yesterday on Tom Brady, the roughing the passer against the Atlanta Falcons, I mentioned it earlier, is embarrassing. I mean, it's not as embarrassing as letting a quarterback go out into the game when he shouldn't, but it's still embarrassing. So you went from not protecting a quarterback and allowing him back in the game to wrapping bubble wrap around these guys? Embarrassing.
Child, please.
What are you doing, NFL? Get it together. So the other thing that we really didn't get into today is what happened last night with the Padres and the Mets. Joe Musgrave passes the test, and then he stuck it to the Mets. So he did have shiny ears. Like, I haven't seen ears talked about that much since I went like Dumbo the Elephant Man. Like, they were shiny, but I don't know. Buck Showalter asked the umps to check it. They looked at the hands, the glove, the hat, the ears. They didn't go through his hair like, who's the other guy that they went through his hair earlier this year? And then he got it done and just fed it to the dugout, to the crowd. Good on him. And good on Buck Showalter as well for doing it. This is the playoffs, man.
Playoffs?
You do everything. It's kind of like the illegal stick call. Remember the Habs in 93 with Marty McSorley and the Kings called an illegal stick, and one of the reasons the Kings did not win the Stanley Cup. You do anything that's allowed in the rulebook. Houston Astros, I'm looking in your direction to win in the playoffs. I had zero problem with Buck Showalter asking for that. You're trying to get him off his rhythm. Now, the Padres had a problem because they're insinuating that they think Joe Musgrove is cheating. I don't care. You think what you want. Buck Showalter said after, I don't care what people think. You're trying to win the game. You play to win the game. Remember somebody said that? So I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was funny. And I thought Andrew McCutcheon tweeting out about that he guarantees he's wearing Red Hot, and Musgrove said after he wasn't. But buckle up. It's just getting started. Just getting started. Phillies and Braves will kick things off tomorrow, 1:07 p.m. Eastern. Ranger Suarez, an all-lefty matchup. Suarez versus Max Fried. Fried 14-7, 2.48 ERA. Suarez 10-7, 3.65 ERA. The other National League Series will get underway at 9:37 p.m. I still haven't seen any probable pitchers for this one. I'll just refresh here. And, yeah, I'm still not seeing any probable pitchers for that one. They could be out there. I'll check one. Oh, here we go. Kershaw against Mike Clevenger. How does Major League MLB.com not have this, but another website does? So Clevenger versus Kershaw. This is going to be fun. I do think the Dodgers are going to win, but I think the Padres are much better. So you got Suarez, Fried in the one matchup, Clevenger, Kershaw for the Dodgers and the Padres. Mariners and Astros, Justin Verlander. Cy Young, he's going to win the Cy Young. 18-4, $1.75 earned run average. He's going to take on Logan Gilbert of Seattle. You want to talk about different ends of the spectrum. Logan Gilbert has 19 wins in his career. Justin Verlander has 18 this year. Now, Gilbert was great this year, 13-6, 174 strikeouts in 186 innings. That's good. 3.2 ERA, but it's not Justin Verlander. Still, Mariners, don't count them out, obviously, like the Jays did. And then the Guardians and the Yankees. And, so what does Cleveland do now? They just fended off a really good Tampa team, all 3 games by 1 run. One of them went into the 15th inning, and it was a walk-off, as Jamie said. They're going to throw Cal Quantrill up against Garrett Cole. Quantrill, 15-5, 3.38 ERA, battle of righties. Garrett Cole, 13-8, 3.50. Garrett Cole, susceptible to the long ball. Cleveland, they can hit. They can hit the long ball. It all starts tomorrow. 11:07 Mountain Time, 1:37 Mountain Time, 5:37 Mountain Time, 7:37 Mountain Time, and the NHL kicks off tomorrow with a couple of games. It is going to be absolutely dynamite, as Jimmy Walker used to say. That's it for me today. Big thanks to Larry Fisher, who popped back on the show. Also, Jamie Thomas joined us on the program today. Had so much fun. Got a couple more rankings out there. Riled some people up. Love doing it. Stirring the pot. Can't wait to be back again tomorrow. Enjoy the Monday nighter tonight. Go Raiders. Chiefs, Raiders. We'll recap it all and everything else that comes up tomorrow as well. My name is Dean Millard. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you today. Enjoy the Monday Night Football contest.
Thanks now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.